In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus Live with Simone Eli and Gerhard Mathangani.
And another quarterback is off the board from the transfer portal. We saw it before a few weeks ago. Sam Levitt was at a basketball game with Lane Kiffin, but then flirted a little bit with the Tennessee Volunteers, also flirted a little bit with Miami, but he will now be in-house with LSU and Lane Kiffin. This is a monster pickup for Kiffin in the transfer portal. Welcome to Southeast Sports Plus. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined by Patrick Walsh. And Patrick, this is a really interesting time in the portal because the portal closes on Friday of this week, and so everybody's making their last-minute pitches, their deals, getting deals done. And once again, we have another big quarterback off the board.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about this yesterday about how he had committed. He took the visit to Knoxville last week, and I know Miami was in the mix for a little bit. And
right.
It seemed like the end of the visit to Baton Rouge with Lane Kiffin didn't really end well. It seemed like he was kind of shoving him out the door because Lane Kiffin actually wanted Damon Williams up at Washington.
Right. And
we saw how that scenario all panned out. Williams ended up removing his name from the transfer portal. He's probably going to have to make ends meet there in Washington, make amends with some of the coaching staff there after that. But this was something that just honestly came out of the blue because Lane Kiffin took the trip up to Knoxville to basically pluck him away from the Tennessee Volunteers and bring him back to the boot and get himself back in the mix. We saw he committed earlier in the week. Now it's official. He has officially signed with LSU.
Yeah, and one of the big things always when it comes to this is, number one, fit. And I think that Lane Kiffin does a really good job of being able to kind of fit his system to his quarterbacks. Yeah. Of course, he's probably done some extensive research on what Sam Levitt is really good at doing, and then being able to kind of fit that to what he's doing with LSU. I don't necessarily think that this is going to be a bust situation. I don't know if the juice will be worth the squeeze after it's all said and done. I don't know how much he equates to wins. So I think a lot of it will have to do with the talent that he gets around him. But it did feel like a lot of drama, though, and I wonder if this is kind of the new normal when it comes to these quarterbacks, because it feels like, and I'm sure at some point we'll get the truth about how all this went down. But you had a situation where Sam Levitt starts at LSU, then he goes and flirts with Tennessee for a little bit. Some reports he was in Miami, and then he comes back. And I wonder if you mentioned Damon Williams, and I wonder if some of this back and forth gamesmanship is kind of what we're just going to have to expect with this position, especially in these high-profile programs.
But does it really surprise you when you take a look at who we're talking about right now? I mean, we're talking about the guy that just loves to be at the center of attention with absolutely anything and everything, that being Lane Kiffin. I mean, his whole exit from Ole Miss was the center of attention. There's so much controversy. His whole life has been surrounded with controversy, and he even admitted it in his documentary with ESPN that came out earlier this year about the many lives of Lane Kiffin, which we talked about. And it just seems like this is just another piece in the puzzle. He posts all of those devotionals every day. He kind of takes backhanded jabs at Ole Miss and some of the other programs. It's something that we're probably going to grow accustomed to, but at the same time, it doesn't really surprise me because we're talking about Lane Kiffin here. I mean, this guy, he loves to be at the center of everything.
No question about it. And, of course, whenever you talk about these kind of quarterbacks, you have to talk about the dollar figure, the market value for this guy, reportedly signing for $5 million with LSU.
I mean, goodness. What are we doing?
That's a lot of lettuce. And I'll tell you what, I think I was going back and thinking, is this too much or whatever?
Yeah.
And I think now we've kind of gotten to the quarterback market where you almost have to take in overinflated prices as part of the norm.
Right.
So, for example, I don't really trade Bitcoin, but I was looking at Bitcoin's prices today, and it's like 94,000. At one point, it was like 120. Well, would you have paid that? Would you have paid 95 now if you could think it goes back up to 120, if you think it's overvalued or not? I just think that at this point it's just going to be overinflated. So I was looking back at the last, previous guys that have signed for big money deals, and it looked like that 5 was kind of the going number at this point. If you take a look at what we talked about yesterday with Ty Simpson, former Alabama quarterback,
6.5
reported for 6.5, and a couple other schools north of $4 million. Carson Beck signing for just shy of $5 million. I
believe Chambliss's contract, if he comes back, is like $5 million as well. So it is like the going rate. But the difference with football is between football and basketball is obviously basketball. You're going to see higher contracts just because it still is so weird to hear that. Just because there's less players on the rosters and stuff. I mean, football, you've got like 100 people on the roster. But,
exactly.
I mean, the going rate is probably $5 million for a good quarterback. I think Keywan Lacey's getting $2 million to stay there in Oxford, so that's the going rate for a good running back. But I think the one thing, if you're an LSU fan, that you've got to watch out for with Levitt is the foot problems. We saw it a little bit this year at Arizona State. He was dealing with that foot injury. He had his season cut short. But Lane Kiffin and crew there at LSU aren't done by any means because this NIL deal has performance-based incentives built into it.
Right.
And so if he misses some time due to his foot injury, that LSU is not on the books for that.
Yeah.
So that's one thing that you got to keep in mind. But at the same time, where did Sam Levitt come from?
Came from Arizona State.
Who's the last quarterback that went to LSU that came from Arizona State?
It's a guy named Jaden Daniels, who ended up winning the Heisman Trophy, ended up taking the Washington Commanders all the way to the NFC Championship game. This has been a nice pipeline from Arizona State to LSU, and I don't know if Sam Levitt will have the exact same production as Jaden Daniels did, but I mean, with Jaden Daniels, when he came in, I expected him to be solid.
Yeah.
He completely blew away my expectations of him as far as going into the SEC and being a dynamic player. As far as running the football, I think it'll be left to be seen if he has that kind of impact. But it does feel like Lane Kiffin thinks that he can have that kind of impact, considering Lane's background with guys that he's gotten so far.
And Jaden Daniels is the true dual threat quarterback.
Sure,
and
absolutely.
We talked about when Frank Wilson ended up leaving for Ole Miss.
Right.
We brought up the rushing stats, and he kind of, I want to say like camouflaged some of these weaknesses under Frank Wilson and some of the other rushing problems under Brian Kelly as well, because Jaden Daniels, I believe his senior year, was averaging almost 100 rushing yards a game.
Right.
And that's on top of throwing for, I don't remember what the number is.
300 yards per game, it felt like.
Now, what I will say about that is he also had Malik Neighbors.
Right.
So who is going to be that top wide receiver for LSU? Because they have Harlem Berry, who they're very high on in the running back room. They also got Caden Durham to come back. That's a big one.
Right.
They just got the guy from Wisconsin. So the running back depth is there. But we got to see if Lane Kiffin's 10 wide receivers that he got out of the transfer portal, if one of them can actually step up and provide a nice weapon for Sam Levitt to use for next year.
Yeah, given his track record, you would think that possibly this could be a situation where he gets a good receiver. He's got a good wide receiver one to be able to kind of gel all that together. I mean, when you take a look at what LSU has ahead in 2026, and it's hard to forecast what these offenses and what these defenses will look like. But I mean, that home game against Clemson, chances at home against teams like Mississippi State, who should be improved next year, Alabama, and of course Texas. Then obviously Texas A&M, who made the college football playoff, and then you got to go on the road. Of course, that very first road game, the SEC setting up perfectly, going to Ole Miss, an improved Kentucky team that has gotten a lot of guys out of the transfer portal with new coach Will Stein. Auburn, who's expected to be improved with coach Alex Golish there, and then Tennessee and Arkansas still looking for some answers there.
I would be shocked if they didn't make the playoff next year, just looking at that schedule.
I could see some pitfalls, but no, I mean, I think you could easily get 10 wins there.
I think I could definitely. They're not going to finish the regular season undefeated.
I don't think so either. No.
I could see them finishing undefeated at home, though.
Yes.
Because Texas A&M. Obviously, this was under Brian Kelly. They came in, and they basically got Brian Kelly fired.
Right.
I don't expect LSU to lay an egg against them again. And then Clemson, unless Dabo gets in the portal or something like that. I mean, I just don't see Clemson and Dabo still being the threat that they once were.
Me neither.
And then you have Latek, McNeese, Mississippi State, who knows what we're going to see out of Camario Taylor next year. I still think they're a year or two away from being back up where they used to be. And then Alabama should be a tough one, but I mean, who knows who the Tide are going to roll out at quarterback? It seems like they're starting to shore up the defense there and adding a few wide receivers. And then Texas should be an interesting one because Arch Manning's return to his home state of Louisiana. And then you only have 5 road games.
Yeah.
So I mean,
it's a favorable schedule, home versus away. Yeah.
Yeah, and you talked about the Ole Miss game that's going to set up to be just absolute fireworks across the board. That's the one I could see them losing just because you know Oxford's going to be pumped up. You know Pete Golding is going to be pumped up. I feel like Ole Miss has more to gain from that game than LSU has to lose.
No question about it. I think that could be the stumbling block game. And then maybe, who knows, with new head coaches at Auburn, at Arkansas, at Kentucky, if they do happen to beat Ole Miss, I could see them, stumbling against one of the other teams that are new looking there in 2026. Meanwhile, staying with the quarterback theme, there's another quarterback that's on the move there as well. Missouri quarterback Bo Perbula came in basically injury duty, not mop-up duty, but injury duty after both Sam Horn got hurt, then Bo Perbula got hurt, then Zollers came in. But Perbula injured, however, looks to be trending where he'll be 100% going into next year. Now going to Virginia. This makes for an interesting ACC.
Yeah, and Virginia just got news last week that their former starting quarterback, Chandler Morris, was looking for a 7th year of eligibility, which that's also a little bit crazy. But we kind of figured that he was not going to be granted that just based off what we saw with Trinidad Chambliss last week as well. So, I mean, you're talking about Bo Perbula, who this year got his first taste as being a true starter. I mean, it was a battle up until the first drive of the season, and then Sam Horn went down with the injury. Then he goes to baseball. So now Missouri was looking for that next quarterback. They get Austin Simmons. But this season they had Bo Perbula, who at times looked like he could have been the guy. I think I said this a few weeks ago when we were talking about when he entered the portal. I have some concerns with Eli Drinkwitz's ability to develop quarterbacks. We've seen this start to become a reoccurring theme. And if there's one guy that he can develop, it's got to be Austin Simmons because he has talent all over the place. The one thing he struggles with is the interception rate. And I think if Eli can get that down somehow, Austin Simmons is going to be a great fit. But I find this one very interesting with Bo Perbula going to not only the ACC. I think he'll find success in the ACC. But the fact that he's going to the rival school of his former head coach, James Franklin.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. He's going to go be able to go wit for wit with Franklin. Of course, if you don't know the backstory, Bo Perbula was at Penn State at the same time that James Franklin was at Penn State. So that should make for an interesting pre-game and post-game conversations between those two about what their journeys have been like ever since leaving Happy Valley. I think that this is this makes we talked about James Franklin going to the ACC. This year alone has showed you the ACC kind of is wide open. I think you would have to probably pencil in Miami as the favorite going into next year. But with Miami making all the way to the national championship game, Virginia making it to the ACC championship game, Duke was in there as well, ended up winning the ACC. You have a new head coach in James Franklin. Who knows with Clemson? I think the ACC, I don't think it'll be up there with the Big Ten and the SEC, but it could be interesting in my opinion.
Hey, don't sleep on my Orange either.
And the Syracuse, exactly.
They're going to be reloading. They've got Steve Angeli coming back. I think they've got a favorable schedule here for next year. But it's just we dog on the ACC all the time.
Yeah, I know. It's just fun.
But we can't really anymore because the SEC's not in the. They're not in the national championship, and the ACC is.
Yeah, for the third year in a row, and I'm willing to admit. I mean, I've been following the SEC for years and years and years. I'm willing to admit that the Big Ten is the premier conference right now, and everybody else just kind of has to sit on the sideline. However, Miami can throw a wrench in the ACC's narrative with a win next Monday night over Indiana.
Yeah, that's going to be a good game.
It is going to be a good game. A tall order, and it's a funny line as well because Miami's at home. Really, legitimately at home,
but
the first game.
The ticket blocks kind of prevent them for actually having a home field advantage, and especially with it being $3,000. Before we go to break here, a couple of former Alabama starters on the defensive side going up to Ohio State. So Guay Russo and James Smith both entered the transfer portal and are now committed to Ryan Day and Ohio State. We talked about the Ohio State defense here this year. Seems like they really carried a young quarterback in Julian Sayin, and it seems like they're just going to reload for next year.
Yeah, reloading for sure. And these are two guys that were highly recruited, especially Russo was a 5-star prospect coming out of high school, came out of the Montgomery area. The fact that they're going up there together makes me feel like, okay, there's some camaraderie going on that'll transfer from Tuscaloosa to Columbus. I think if you're Ohio State, I think you know that you'll have a great offense, but it's now all going to be about the defense and can they get it done. They have two guys that have proven it so far, and Ohio State just continues to stack and stack and stack. I think these two are dynamite for what Ryan Day's trying to build their defense.
And we talked about the Arizona State to LSU quarterback pipeline.
Right.
It seems like there's a little bit of a trend here with Alabama defensive players going up to Ohio State. Caleb Downs is projected to be a lottery pick. I hope he falls to the Cowboys, even though I know it's not going to happen. But I mean, it is a defense that basically willed the Buckeyes to the number 1 or to the number 2 seed in the college football playoff, and ultimately it was the offense that kind of let them down there against Miami. So you would expect the offense to be a little bit better. Don't know how much of a drop off there will be with Brian Hartline leaving to go to USF. But I wouldn't expect there to be any drop off with the defense, even though they're losing so many of these key players to the draft.
Absolutely. So that's kind of your transfer portal news going into the final week of portal action here. Of course, Alabama right there in the mix. We'll talk a little bit about Ty Simpson, the Alabama quarterback, and his decision coming up a little bit later on our show. Next up, we head over to Knoxville, and we will check in with our friends there at WATE. Some big basketball action going on between both the men's team and the women's team right now. We will break it all down next here on Southeast Sports Plus. Stay with us. back here on Southeast Sports Plus, and we are headed out to Knoxville, talk some Tennessee Volunteers, both basketball on the men's side and the women's side, and some interesting football notes as well. We'll get that with our friend Sam Rothman here. Number one, welcome, Sam. Always good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you guys.
Absolutely. Let's start in basketball, because this is a team that had a lot of promise on the men's side, and now coming a couple of games into the SEC, it's been a little shaky. I don't want to panic, because I think that the teams that they've lost to have been good teams, obviously Arkansas, and then most lately to defending national champion Florida Gators. What do you make of this early start here, and kind of what happened there on Saturday in that win, failing to score 70 points?
Yeah, I mean, we've really just seen two different teams with Tennessee, a team on the road and a team at home. I wouldn't be shocked if they didn't lose a game at home, but I wouldn't be shocked too if they're under 500 on the road this year, because they've just looked like two different teams. And then with Florida, it was just the turnovers. It's been the story kind of all season long, but it really just manifested itself with 18 of them. And this is a team, I think we've talked about it a lot. There's a lot of new faces on this team. Just one returning starter from last year, lost a lot of veteran presence. And it seems like when Tennessee gets down in a hole, everyone freaks out. No one really comes together and can figure it out. Now, that's not to say Jacoby Gillespie, he's a veteran guy, but not a veteran guy on this team. And then another thing that Sam talked a lot about yesterday in our newscast was that teams are figuring out, Jacoby had, 30-something points against Texas. So teams are like, all right, let's just shut him down. Let's see who else they have. And it seems like Tennessee can't really handle it when that star player is shut down. Now, this is a different looking Barnes team, because in the years past you've seen Zakai be point guard, and then you had a guard that was your main scorer. This year your point guard is your main scorer, so you take Gillespie out and this team kind of just freaks out, not freaks out, but just looks so different, defeated. Now taking Gillespie out helped Nate Ament step up a little bit. He looked better against Florida, but his 17 points, you're going to need more production from him, as you're putting up on the screen. Yeah, Jacoby held to 12 points. That's just not going to cut it in the SEC, and you're supposed to be, the team's go-to guy. So, yeah, I mean, it was a struggling performance, but getting right back at it tonight against Texas A&M at home, and they've looked a lot better at home. So I'm interested to see how this team bounces back, because, Barnes is going to whip them into shape. So,
yeah. Well, I mean, you talked about how they look a lot better at home. They're undefeated at home, but it's when they play those road games, they have yet to win a road game. So, I mean, that's where the struggle is, and you're not going to really have any success. I find it interesting, though, that the net rankings really haven't punished them that much. I believe that they sit at 27 right now, and they're still ranked, which is
still ranked.
I don't know.
They dropped out of the coaches poll. I don't know. I think it's hard to judge this team because they've had really dominating performances and looked good against good teams. If you go back to that, early in Vegas beating Houston, and then they looked dominant against Texas. They've had these dominant performances, obviously. That win against Louisville was great. I mean, but then you turn around and you have these games that they look completely different. So I think it's hard to figure this team out right now. They do have a lot of big games coming up. So we'll see what happens. But yeah, I mean, you can't just be good at home. Unfortunately, March Madness is not played on your home court. So it's going to be a short run if you can't figure out how to play on the road and how to win on the road.
Is it time to panic? It seems like no, not yet. Still early?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I don't think so. I think it's still early.
Okay.
I have a lot of belief in Barnes. His teams always seem to peak at the right time. I feel like I've been here. This is my third season covering Tennessee basketball, and there's always been these blips where you start to freak out. It actually happened against Florida 2 years ago, was it, when they were at Florida? Or no, last year at Florida, and they had a terrible performance. I think they were held to what? It was like a season low. I think they were held to under 30 points in the first half, if I'm not mistaken. It was a bad performance. And then Florida came to Knoxville, and Tennessee destroyed the Gators, and they were down 3 starters. So, again, but that just reinforces that at home, obviously, this is a rowdy environment, a great crowd at the Food City Center. But again, you got to be able to win on the road. Tonight, we're not going to really get an answer to that with Tennessee hosting Texas A&M, and then they host Kentucky this weekend, which will be a big game. But you got to win these two, right? You're at home, you got to win these two. You can't have any blips, and then get back on the road and try to pick up a good road win just to get the confidence going and everything like that. Because, yeah, there are some, doubters right now. I'm not one of them, but we'll see what happens. Yeah. So these two home games, big road games against Alabama and Georgia, two really good SEC teams. So that will be the test. The week of the 24th will be the test.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get your take on what lies ahead tonight here in a second. But first, to your overall point about inconsistency, Coach Rick Barnes talks about that with his squad and trying to get more consistent.
We need more consistency from our front line, probably as much as anything. And that's not just scoring. That's being where you need to be on ball screen defense, because oftentimes Jacoby's in those screens more than anybody, and he's having to work really hard on the offensive end. And then the other area is our other guards, because when other teams put our other guards in position, they're going to have to handle the ball more than maybe they're used to. Are they going to make the right decisions? Are they going to get us organized when teams are just flat out taking Jacoby out? And we've talked about that. I mean, we told him almost every game going in out the other team's going to play us based on what we know about them. And so there's a lot of little things that can be big things if we don't see it. And but that's a great question, and I don't have an answer to it right now, because when I ask them that question, what do you think their answer is? I don't know. And that's probably, I don't understand it either. For as much as we talk about it, as much as we, and I know we got a group of guys that care, but all I can tell you in the end, I tell them that if they don't fix it, is because they really don't care, because it's right there. I mean, there's no question about it, and it'll always come back to your training, your preparation, the process you go through. If you don't do it every single day and understand it, it's simple. You got to get better every day.
Coach Rick Barnes is not one to kind of coach speak a lot of things, especially when it comes to his team's effort. And I love the honesty that with he speaks. If he doesn't have an answer, he'll tell you, I don't have an answer, and or we're looking for it, or we're finding it. They're trying to look for some answers tonight against Texas A&M. You'll get a first good look there at Buckyball. They're undefeated right now in conference play, riding a 6-game winning streak so far heading into this matchup. I know you talked about the inconsistencies home versus away, but tell me a little bit about this matchup, the way that you think it'll play out, given the fact that it is there in Knoxville.
Yeah, I think Tennessee comes in as a 9.5-point favorite. I think that's just because, it's interesting when you see a team that is undefeated in SEC play and one that's 1-2 and is coming off a bad loss be 9.5-point favorites. But I think that home crowd is really going to help. I also think the fact that performance against Florida just didn't cut it. Barnes said post-game that was not Tennessee basketball. That was one of the worst performances as a head coach he's seen, and he's been doing this for a long time. So that's a big statement. So I expect them to bounce back, have a lot more fire, use the crowd, hopefully clean up those turnovers, because if they don't clean it up, you're going to see that become an issue throughout the game. And it doesn't matter if you're home or away. If you're turning the ball over, you don't have the ball, you can't score. So, But I expect that to be cleaned up tonight.
Absolutely. Let's flip over to the women's side. Unlike the men, kind of inconsistent. The women have been on a nice little 5-game winning streak so far here. Coach Caldwell's group has looked really strong in the early goings of SEC play. I mean, an absolutely dominating win the other day.
Yeah.
This team and where they stand right now, is this exactly where they want to be, where they're good, but they can get better as the season goes along, which is kind of the scary thing?
Oh, they can get a lot better. And I don't want to be a doubter, take it with a grain of salt, but you have to look at who Tennessee started out the season with. And I think that helps a lot, because you're building up this team. This is another new-looking team, and you have, not the big dogs of the SEC. You're taking down Arkansas. You're taking down Auburn, Mississippi State. These are great wins. And, if Tennessee wants to be who Tennessee wants to be at the end of the year, you should be beating Arkansas by 35 points. And that's exactly what they did. They also did it even more impressive without Talasia Cooper, their leading scorer. She got hit in the head during shoot-around. She should be fine for the game against Alabama coming up this weekend, which would be a big one on the road. And that's when the schedule starts getting a little bit more tougher, and all of a sudden the LSUs, the Texases, UConn, non-conference, big game coming up. So that will be interesting. But I think for a team like this, that there were a lot of questions about them during non-conference play, this stretch of SEC play to fix things against maybe lesser opponents, that it worked out this way so they can gel, and then, okay, let's see how we face against, the big dogs of the SEC.
It seems like the freshmen have started to develop it into their own roles, and how I don't want to make it seem like they have unrealistic expectations, because as you mentioned, this is where the schedule starts to get tough. You have Alabama moving forward. You have the LSUs. But what can you expect from them as they start to play some of these tough games and they go through the gauntlet? I don't know if you heard Vic Schaefer talk about his thoughts on the gauntlet schedule that Texas has. What can we
they
expect?
all have it at some point.
I mean, everybody has it. It's the SEC.
I know, maybe you have it up, but I see here. So you have Alabama on. I have my handy dandy calendar right here. You have at Alabama this Sunday. Then you have Kentucky, one of the top teams in the SEC. Then you're going to Ole Miss. That's no easy task either. And then I think next month in February you have LSU, you have Texas, you have UConn. South Carolina.
Yeah.
Then you have a big interest. I know Mizzou's been struggling, but that's a big game in terms of the storyline with Kelly Herber coming back to Knoxville. I mean, there's a lot of tough games coming up. So I saw what Vic Schaefer said. I wouldn't, Texas is still pretty good, I wouldn't give it past them. But yeah, I think that it's going to be a very defining part of this season. And to see how, Mia Paldo was just named SEC Freshman of the Week. She's looked really good. She's really coming into her own, facilitating this offense really well. We'll see what happens when she goes up. There's going to be a height difference coming up soon. She's a smaller player, smaller point guard. And when you face the South Carolinas, the LSUs, they're going to be a little bit bigger, stronger, faster than you. So it'll be interesting to see how she goes up against them. Coach
Kim Caldwell on her young group of freshmen.
It's hard because people ask me about that's the Mia we have seen. That's the Mia we recruited. That's what we knew she could do. So I would just equate it to she's got more time. She's got more games under her belt. She is playing with a little more confidence. She has the confidence of her teammates. They're not falling down as much. They understand their assignments. They're trying. They're trying to get in their gaps. They're trying to get into help. They're fouling way too much. That's pretty much all of us. We need to play a physical opponent and see if we can stay on our feet.
Coach Kim Caldwell just keeping it real right there with her squad. Like you said, a tough gauntlet coming up here over the next few weeks. Let's go to football now. Some really interesting things that we've heard during the break. We had no idea the access that you had as Joey Aguilar is getting back some of the talk, I would think, from the NCAA. Tell us about what you heard and just some of the things that you're learning about this process as these guys apply for these waivers and look for extra eligibility.
Yeah, so Joey was able to play last year because the initial Diego Pavia lawsuit. Now, because he played 2 years in JUCO, he's asking for an extra year. So that court case is still ongoing, and they had a call yesterday, a conference call with the judge, representatives from the NCAA and representatives from all the players. There's about 20 players that are involved in the Diego Pavia lawsuit, Aguilar obviously being one of them. And they basically said, hey, judge, the transfer portal window is closing on Friday. We need to speed this process up, right? And the judge basically said, yeah, I know, but we can't. And the NCAA and the players' representatives came to a conclusion, okay, maybe let's just not do live testimony during the court case. Would that move up the court case? And it was interesting to see them agree on something, right? And then, but the judge said, no, I have bigger, more important, more important cases to deal with.
Right.
So he said, I know this portal is closing, but you're gonna have to wait 2 to 3 weeks to get a hearing. Now that lies an issue is that the portal obviously closes on Friday. Now, it isn't an issue because Tennessee kind of has not done so well in terms of getting a quarterback in the portal. So even if Joey gets another year in 2 to 3 weeks, doesn't really cause a problem because right now Tennessee's looking to probably add a depth piece at quarterback. Obviously, Heupel is probably selling it as you'll compete for the starting job.
Right.
But it's really George McIntyre's, the redshirt freshman 4-star from here in Nashville, or big 5-star recruit Faison Brandon, true freshman, though, it's their job to lose at this point because you didn't bring in one of those big names in the portal. So best case scenario is that Joey gets that extra year and is able to compete and for his job back.
Right.
At this point, though, all signs point to him not getting the extra year of eligibility just from what we've seen in the other cases. Now they're all different, but you really there's a reason why Heupel was really trying to get Sam Levitt. Let's just say that they don't. The belief really isn't there. Even when Levitt was supposedly signing with LSU, Tennessee threw one last ditch effort, one last final number at him to lure him back. So yeah, right now Tennessee, the defense, we were talking about it off camera, defense looks great. That was the issue last year.
Yeah.
Jim Knowles has brought all his guys in from Penn State. They look like they're going to be a lot more aggressive, a lot more fierce on defense. The question now is you need a quarterback, right? And you got good options of young guys, but Heupel, and we've really seen with college football now, those veteran transfers come in and they make a big difference.
Right.
So it'll be interesting to see what comes through here, because as of 3:37 Eastern time, Tennessee only has 2 quarterbacks on its roster, which is not good. So.
And you and I both know, you and I have both seen firsthand this year what happens when you only have one quarterback that has experience and he goes down with an injury, and then you have to, go to Ricky Collins, which Syracuse and Kennesaw State just basically traded quarterbacks. Speaking of the Orange, real quick before we let you go, what are your thoughts on the season so far? They got Calvin Russell, who was just in high school a few weeks ago, enrolls early, enrolls in the spring semester, and is now on the basketball roster. So, I mean, you've got a 2-sport athlete, the highest recruit in Syracuse football in a long time. And what are your thoughts on the Orange right now under Red Autry?
You're throwing me off. You think I'm paying attention to Syracuse basketball right now?
Come on. I mean, it's a basketball school. You know, historically.
Sam was like, call me on Selection Sunday. Tell me where we're seated.
I have traded in my. I traded in my orange for my Pantone 151 orange shade. I grew up a diehard Rangers fan. And I was on the phone with my friend, and my friend said, "I'm so sorry about your Rangers." I'm like, "What happened?" They're like, "Igor's on IR. They just lost 10-2." I'm like, I had no idea. I'm in the transfer portal. I'm trying to find out if Joey's coming back. That's what I'm trying to find out. I'm trying to see if Tennessee can fix the turnover issues tonight. But yeah, all of that sounds good and dandy. I will say about Syracuse basketball, I think maybe I didn't hop on here this week, but I hopped on with Stephen Fonte in Syracuse, his podcast. And I was like, yeah, Tennessee's going to destroy the Orange. They're going to win by like 15. And we saw what happened. So that was kind of my introduction. Oh, Syracuse basketball looks good. So
better than the football team.
I would say compared to last year, they look a lot better. Yeah, that's my take.
I love it. She is a one-team woman. You know what? She's there. She's in. She's
how bad they've been recently. It's not surprising.
It's kind of easy to put them in the back burner mentally and otherwise.
They still lost. Yeah,
my freshman year, we beat Duke on that buzzer beater, and ever since then, it just hasn't been the same.
Oh man, don't bring it up! Come on,
it's been going downhill.
Don't bring it up.
She's the soothsayer. She's the truth teller of Syracuse basketball.
Hey, I say that I'm a New Yorker. I say it how it is. You're always gonna get that.
Yes.
I love it. Sam, you've been awesome. Thank you so much for your time here on Southeast Sports Plus. Keep the good juju at home for the men's basketball team, and we'll continue rooting for that women's basketball team there as well. Thank you for your time here today.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. See you later.
All right. Sam Levitt joining us from New York. And I think also it's a distance thing, too. I think the further you get away miles-wise, it's harder to keep up.
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, you're talking about a Syracuse team that is trying to get back to the glory days ever since the whole sanctions came down from the NCAA about the Jim Boeheim recruiting violations and stuff like that. So, I mean, they've just been so bad.
I know.
They still lost to Hofstra here this year. I think they have Florida State tonight. So, you know, they're trying to bring it back.
Hey, they've been on a nice little run here.
See if they can keep going.
She's got to hit the free throws. Next here on Southeast Sports Plus, we head over to Oklahoma, and we will talk some Sooners basketball and football next. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, we head out now to Oklahoma City. We catch up with our good friend Holden Kruzmark, covering both the Oklahoma Sooners, as well as the Oklahoma State Cowboys, the Oklahoma City Thunder, who at the beginning of the season, I'm not going to get on a Thunder trip, but at the beginning of the season, I thought this team was going to beat the Warriors record, and they hit a spell. I have no idea how and why, but we'll talk about them a little bit more coming up later on another hit. But let's start with Oklahoma Sooners, because this is a team that looked almost unbeatable at home, kind of on the road on the men's basketball side. You had a team that was a little shaky, took another one on the chin this past weekend there. This team overall, I think you had measured expectations.
I think we lost him there.
I think we lost Holden. We'll try to get him back here shortly. But no, we had some measured expectations about this basketball team going into the season. We knew that it was a decent team, obviously not the cream of the crop, but could make the NCAA tournament again. Right. Then they lose to Texas A&M, which I think Texas A&M is kind of turning everybody's heads right now with that buckyball. It's been a weird Oklahoma team, because there are some bright spots, but there are some definitely points of concern.
Yeah, and there's one guy that Holden talked about in Nigel Pack, who can be that guy that already has experience with leading a program. He helped lead Miami to the Final Four, I believe it was that 1 year. Goodness, I'm trying to remember who else is on that roster, but that was the year that Miami had that random run that nobody saw coming. Kind of like this year on the football side, nobody saw this run coming, but he had 24 points in the loss to Texas A&M there. His third 20-plus point game this season. So, I mean, he is that leader. It just seems like, like a lot of teams in the SEC, Oklahoma is just trying to find some consistency. And it's so hard to find that, especially this year with all of these great teams. I mean, Alabama's trying to find some consistency. Auburn's trying to find a leader that isn't late to practice. And it's just like, you just want to see these guys be able to step up into their roles. I believe we do have Holden back here. Holden, we were just talking about Nigel Pack, and he dropped 24 points, but they lose another one, and it just seems like they just can't find this consistency lately.
Yeah, consistency is kind of the name of the game here with OU, and they just, both the men and the women, they lack it, and you get these flashes, and then it just disappears, and there's no real explanation. I mean, against A&M, they take the lead with about 6.5 minutes to go, and then they go about the next 4 to 5 minutes without scoring a single point.
Right.
And it's just like, what happens here? You guys are playing okay, and then it just disappears. And I think that's probably the most frustrating thing for both Porter Moser and Jenny Baranczyk right now is how can they get their teams to not go in these big scoring droughts and these lulls where just nothing's working for them.
Right. With this team, we talked about Mo Wagi, a guy that was very productive at his other 2 stops, and he comes over to Oklahoma. Looks good at the beginning of the season, but it seems like some foul trouble has been plaguing him a little bit. Describe what has been the issue there. Is it just like a discipline, like a focus? Maybe he's just maybe a little too aggressive. What's the issue there keeping him off the floor and really kind of hurting his team without that big man presence?
Yeah, I think he kind of just picks up some of those little ticky-tack fouls that, it comes as a result of like maybe being a little too aggressive, trying to, grab an offensive rebound or something like that, maybe playing a little too strong down on the block. And we, like you said, we've talked about how important he is to this team just because they're different without him down low. And keeping him on the floor is just such a huge key for them. And it's been something that they've struggled to do recently. I know Porter talked about how one of the issues when they were playing in the non-conference was that you play against some of these teams where they don't have much size, so he'd get called for easier fouls. But now that you're in SEC play and it's a little bit more physical, I'm surprised he's still picking up some of these fouls. But, it's just you got to be smart and you got to be able to, keep yourself on the floor. And I think there was a point in the A&M game, too, where, he was playing with 4 fouls and you just saw he was a little hesitant to to try and pick up that fifth foul, and AG just kind of manhandled him in the post and got an easy bucket on him, and just because you could see he didn't want to pick up that fifth foul and foul out, and so that's really kind of a tough point for them is trying to keep WKI on the floor. Porter says his conditioning's the best it's ever been, so he's able to be on the floor. He just keeps picking up these fouls and taking himself off the court essentially. So, and that's just part of the consistency. They're not consistently having WKI on the floor. And maybe that kind of disrupts their rhythm too, because when they do miss shots, he's been a pretty consistent offensive rebounder for them, and he's been able to create some big second possessions for them, and he can't do that when he's sitting on the bench.
One more thing before we flip over to the women's side. They've got Florida tonight, and what we've seen from Florida this year is that they're led by their bigs in Condon and Howe, and in my honest opinion, when I take a look at this game, Mo Wagi's availability is probably going to be the most important thing for OU in order to pull off a potential upset, because, I mean, if Wagi's out the game, it seems like the bigs can just tee off. How much of an emphasis, and I know Porter Moser's probably put an emphasis on Wagi to be able to stay in the game, but how much of an emphasis do you think it is on this game for him to be available, especially with the foul trouble lately and how good the bigs are on Florida?
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be vital to whether they can pull this off or not. And as clear as it is for us to sit here and say how valuable it is for OU to have WKI in the game, I think the other teams realize that too, and I think that they're going after him, attacking him, trying to get him to pick up that second foul the first half, to get him out, make him sit most of the first half, and maybe pick up that fourth foul. He has to sit a lot of the second half. So I think it's kind of interesting, just the fact that he is such an X factor for them right now, just in terms of whether he's able to stay on the court or not, because they just don't really have that same kind of presence when they have to go to their bench bigs. They got the Russian big Elatansev, but he isn't exactly large in stature. He's tall, but he's not super big. So you don't. And WKI's not super big either, but he's pretty physical. And Elatansev just doesn't have that same physicality to him. And they do have a bigger guy in Kai Rogers, but he is a true freshman. And so there's just such a difference when WKI is out there versus not. And WKI is a really good shot blocker too. Yeah. So he just, he affects so much down low that if you don't have him in the game, it's just not the same. They tend to kind of like to play small. They'll maybe shift Darion Reed and Tay Davis into the 4-5 spots and play that, which you can get away with. Those guys are both 6'8", 6'9", but they just don't have that down low physicality, the offensive rebounding, and the shot blocking that WKI brings. And so if he's able to play, play 25 minutes, I think OU can keep themselves in this one. But if he gets early foul trouble, it could be an issue for this team. And they've really backed themselves into a corner after losing, it's January 12th, 13th, and it's too early to be saying that, but they really kind of have backed themselves into a corner by losing to Mississippi State and Texas A&M on the road. You just, those are two winnable games. You got to take advantage of the games that are winnable, and they just aren't doing that right now. And now you have Florida and Alabama coming into town and to try and bounce back, and it looks like they may be staring a 4-game losing streak after this week. I don't know.
Speaking of a gauntlet, the women's team are going through a gauntlet right now as we speak in SEC play. Home, we'll ask you to hang tight for a second. We'll go to a quick break, and then we'll come back. We'll talk some women's basketball next. And back here on Southeast Sports Plus, we'll talk women's basketball. Now, there has been an absolute gauntlet to start the SEC for the ladies. Ranked Ole Miss, ranked Kentucky, and then coming up, it is LSU and South Carolina, two teams that are currently in the top 5. I know LSU just lost to had that game against Texas a little bit earlier. This is a really interesting schedule for this Oklahoma basketball team. LSU comes next on Sunday after 2 losses to Ole Miss and Kentucky. Where does Coach Gene Bronkic and this team stand so far through this really tough schedule?
Yeah, they kind of like the men are just not taking advantage of things right now. And, you have a winnable, like Ole Miss is a tough opponent, but it's at home. Should be a winnable game. You're right there with Kentucky down the stretch, and then you lose. And now you have LSU and you have South Carolina coming up. And not to say that, they can't win these games. They're at home, but it's not exactly looking good for them right now that you weren't able to win either of those first 2 games, because now it just gets even more difficult. As we saw, I thought maybe Texas was the best team in the SEC, and then they lose to LSU. So, that doesn't make this LSU game any easier for the Sooners. And I think one of the things with them is kind of similar to the men and trying to keep their big in it. Reagan Beers had some foul trouble against Kentucky, and that played a little bit of a factor. And I don't know that, the bench has kind of been a little up and down, where they've had some good games, but it seemed like they didn't really have it recently. Right. And I think Jenny kind of maybe struggled to trust her bench a little bit, and so she went heavy minutes with Peyton Verhulst and Aaliyah Chavez, and she said so after the game that it's not really fair to expect them to be able to hit big shots when they're playing 40 minutes in the game.
Right.
And that probably contributed a little bit to some of their troubles down the stretch against Kentucky, and ultimately sent them home with another loss.
Coach Ginny Baranchik talked after the game about the team's defense now as they move forward.
I mean, I don't necessarily want to speak for them. I think we are better defensively, and they've always been really good defensively, and they're long. I think for us, I mean, we fouled, so it didn't really, our defense doesn't count if you foul somebody 22 times and you put them to the free throw line 20 times. That's, does that count as good defense? I don't know. But I think, we have to find different ways, especially when Reagan Beers is in foul trouble. We got to find different ways to be able to get something a little bit easier in the paint, and they make it really challenging to do that. So our, we got a long way to go. We have some moments that you can see flashes of us, but we don't have consistency yet. And so that's something we've got to be able to find, especially offensively in terms of the flow of the offense.
Holden, real quick here before we go to break here. Trae Young. I don't really think I saw this trade coming, going from Atlanta to Washington, who are also kind of on the outside looking in the East. Quick, what are your thoughts on him?
Well, I don't think it's very often you hear somebody say that the Wizards are their preferred landing destination.
Exactly.
So that was a little bit of a surprise, but that's kind of where we're at with Trae Young right now, where the Hawks were 2-8 with him playing, and it just seemed very clear that they were better with him not playing.
Yep.
Right. And it's kind of this spot where I think he sees it as a potential to kind of rebuild his stock, his value in the league, and it just kind of was time with the Hawks. Just didn't really seem to work anymore. And it's kind of a sad ending. They had that great Eastern Conference Finals run, but now he's a Washington Wizard. For how long? We'll find out.
Yeah.
We'll find out.
It is certainly a question. Holden, thank you so much for your time here on Southeast Sports Plus today.
Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Holden Kruzmar joining us from Oklahoma City. He nailed it, because when I saw that was his preferred destination, I was like, wait, what?
Who wants to play in Washington?
Who wants to go to Washington? And he could be that leader there on the
They're
court.
not even going to be in D.C. in a few years.
I literally thought when trade rumors started coming out, he was going to try to find a way to weasel his way onto that bench to go ring chase with the Oklahoma City Thunder, but to no avail.
Back in the Sooner State.
Yeah, he is headed there.
College basketball.
One of the NFL's most popular franchises has a new job opening at head coach. We'll talk Pittsburgh Steelers. It's coming up next.
In our neck of the woods, sports is tradition. Sports is passion. Sports is family. Sports is fun. Welcome to our house. This is Southeast Sports Plus Live with Simone Eli and Gerhard Mathangani.
Well, after falling to Texas on Saturday, Alabama's left scratching their heads and looking for some answers. They'll face Mississippi tonight in Starkville, and they'll face off against one of the best, if not the best scorer right now in the entire SEC. As Alabama looks to hang on to their ranking in the top 25, you'd have to figure a win today is a must there at Mississippi State. Welcome back to Southeast Sports Plus. I'm Gerhard Mathangani, joined by Patrick Walsh. And Patrick, the Alabama Crimson Tide headed into the season with guys like Aiden Holloway back, with guys like LeBaron Philon back. There was high hopes that this team could be really, really special. In the non-conference, you saw parts of that. Went on the road, got a big win in Madison Square Garden over St. John's, went on the road to Illinois, played in Chicago, and it felt like the big venue spots where this team's kind of forte. Struggled a little bit at home, though, most recently to Texas.
Yeah, and you bring up the MSG game, and that was the start of a 4-game stretch against teams at the time that were, I believe, all ranked inside the top 15.
Right.
It was, St. John's, it was Illinois, it was Purdue, and I'm blanking on the other one off the top of my head.
Yeah, so I'll look it up.
No, is Arizona maybe? No, Arizona was later.
Was it Houston?
It might have been Houston.
Yeah.
But anyways, what I noticed from those games, and what Nate Oates also noticed, was especially the Purdue game, they just could not grab the rebounding.
Right.
Like, they could not win any of these rebounding battles at all. And as we've talked about all year, and it seems like every year under Nate Oates, this team lives and dies by the three-pointer, and when they're not falling, this Alabama team can be a little bit suspect.
Mm-hmm.
You combine that with the fact that they can't really rebound the ball, yet still average, I believe, 42 a game, which is still, it blows my mind, because the games that they don't rebound are usually the games that they lose, and I feel like there's a lot of those games so far this season.
Yes.
And you would like to see these teams start to fix some of the mistakes that they make early on in the season. You don't really mind too much if you drop a ranked game here and there, make a few mistakes, you figure them out, you get to practice, and then you go to work on them. But it seems like these same mistakes are reoccurring over and over and over again.
Yep, it seems to be a kind of one of those things where Nate Oates is singing the same song over and over about what his team needs, and he's using words the same way that Sean Miller is. Effort and toughness and things that they can control. That last game, by the way, was Gonzaga. That was making me scratch my head to find out what that game was there at the early part of the season when they went through a nice gauntlet of ranked teams. Lost to Vanderbilt, which is nothing to sneeze at, because Vanderbilt is still undefeated and one of the top 10 teams in the country. Lost to them in their gym. And in that game, they missed 31 three-pointers and only lost by 6 points. So you can look at it glass half full, glass half empty. Yep. And then losing to Texas, I think that was kind of the gut check one. I think every now and again, teams need that kind of gut check game. And that Texas game could have been it, as they now go on the road. And the good thing about, playing, in the early part of the week is you kind of, get to erase that thing fast. And I don't know if Alabama quitting is probably too strong a word.
Yeah.
But I do think at this point you need some guys to really step in, because if you're listening to him talk, he's questioning a lot of the more intangible stuff.
Yeah, and I mean, it's the same problem with their in-state rival. Auburn cannot find a leader right now that can step up and guide this team on the path that they were supposed to be in the preseason. Now, we talked about how you need to expect a little bit of a drop-off for Auburn. I mean, obviously, when Bruce Pearl retires, you're going to have to expect there to be a little bit of a drop-off there. But with this Alabama team, you talked about the talent coming back. LeBaron Philon, he's looking for a big night, which I believe when I was checking this, he is ice cold. Like I'm talking,
he is
freezing from 3-point range. I believe he's 2 for his last 18.
Right.
And before that stretch started, I think he had at least 3 3-pointers in 4 straight games. So I think we also talked earlier in the season about how this team goes where LeBaron takes them.
Exactly. And it's probably no surprise that they've had 2 kind of bad shooting nights with him also not having a great shooting night. The one thing you like to see, though, is the fact that he stays aggressive and he's still shooting that shot when they're open, and Nate Oates will always encourage that.
Yeah, and he's never going to lose the confidence. That's the one thing. He's always going to put up points whether or not he makes the 3-pointer or not. But it's a little puzzling for a team that you thought coming off the Vanderbilt loss that they would get back in the gym, they'd be motivated to come back and win that game. LeBaron ended up leaving that game a little bit early. You didn't have Aiden Sherrill that game either, and that definitely hurt you. You get Sherrill back for this game against Texas, and all of a sudden Texas starts playing like the Texas of old, just out of nowhere. That guy right there, Jordan Pope. We talked last week with Noah Gross about how he put a good old goose egg up on the board, and then all of a sudden he drops 28 points. So I mean, that's just the thing that seems to happen for this Alabama team right now, where you compound mistakes along with some of these guys having career nights against you, and that's just a recipe for disaster.
Speaking of career night, the guy on the other sideline could definitely provide that. We'll get to that in a bit, but more specifics here on LeBaron Philon. Since SEC play started, he is 2 for 16 from 3-point land.
You just can't have that.
2 for 16 from 3-point land. Now you can make the argument on the other side, hey, we lost those games. We lost the game close to Vanderbilt. The game with Texas was with reach, and maybe, hey, we get a B- game instead of a C- game, they probably win those games. But that's still left to be seen, and still a lot of what ifs for this Bama team hanging on to the number 19 spot. Alabama head coach Nate Oates talking about the leaders having to step up for this squad.
I thought we didn't do much practicing yesterday. We did some videos, some discussing. I thought there was multiple guys that have stepped up, and even Reitzel, who's not playing, thought was pretty vocal yesterday. I think Taylor's been playing really well here lately. Thought he was pretty good, stepped up. Houston's, a guy that you expect is going to step up and talk, and he did. I even think Preston Murphy, he had some pretty good insight to what needs to happen. But there was a lot of guys that maybe said some stuff in film yesterday, and then I thought in practice today, I thought Aiden Holloway actually had a pretty good practice. I thought he was playing significantly harder on defense, making the right reads on offense. And I thought the energy from everybody was better, but we really need Aiden to be an elite defender, particularly on the perimeter. I thought he had a pretty good practice this morning.
I think if you're watching the SEC, you're going to have to ask yourself one question when it comes to a team like Alabama. Is this team closer to the team that beat St. John's and Illinois? Obviously, played Gonzaga, played really tough, also beat Kentucky to open up the SEC schedule. Or is this team closer to what we've seen over the last 2 games? Really cold shooting, still right there, but not just enough to get over the hump. I mean, this is a team that was the number 1 overall seed at one point, has made a Final Four in the last couple of years. Like Holden said earlier, this is too early to start making these grand assumptions about what a team will be. But I do think you have to start questioning, okay, is this team going to be a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament, or is this team hanging on to a bubble spot just because they'll keep losing and leaking oil, so to speak?
And I think it starts with tonight's game against Mississippi State there in Starkville. And then Holden talked about how Oklahoma's going to welcome Alabama, and Oklahoma, like their rival Texas, they're starting to get to desperation mode here, and they need some resume boosting wins. So, and I think when you look at these next two games specifically, I mean, Mississippi State's no slouch. I know they got blown out by Kentucky, but they've got a guy over there in Josh Hubbard who, like LeBaron Philon, isn't afraid to shoot the basketball. He averages, I believe, 22 per game, and that's up there in Division I here this year. But then you've got a Tennessee team who, again, is, like this Alabama team, is trying to find momentum as you move forward here. After that, you've got Mizzou, who beat Kentucky this year, and then Florida, the reigning national champions, who are starting to figure some stuff out, especially at the guard spot. So, I mean, this is a 5-game stretch that will – I'll just say it like this. This is going to define the season.
Oh, yeah.
Because these are 5 teams that have a lot to play for, all need a resume-boosting win, and we could be sitting here on, I believe – February 2nd is a Monday, right? I believe Groundhog Day is on Monday. Mm-hmm. We could be sitting here on Groundhog Day talking about how Alabama is 0-for to start.
Wow. That would be insane.
Yeah.
That would be absolutely insane. Through the first few games of the season, this is overall stats. Alabama is number 1 in the SEC in scoring, 90 points per game. But you give up 92 to Texas.
You just can't.
You give up 90-plus at Vanderbilt. That's when it really starts to hurt you as the season moves along. Florida, by the way, is number 2 in the league. They're at 85 points per game. So even with Alabama being number 1, they're number 1 by a pretty good margin there, by 5 points there in that matchup. You talked about Mississippi State. Let's flip it over to Mississippi State because they have a really, really fun, interesting piece here because Josh Hubbard, he has been one of, if not the kind of story of the SEC individually as far as pure scoring goes. I know there's been great players all around, but if you want a pure scorer, he's been your guy, and he's been great so far through the first few games.
I believe on this show about a week or two ago, you talked about the infamous Carmelo Anthony stat line where he just shoots the basketball a bajillion times, and that's how he gets points.
Right.
I almost feel like that's Josh Hubbard because I don't remember how many shots he took against who they played. They played Texas in the opener, and he scored 32 points. I want to say he took like 32 shots.
Wow. Yeah.
Like just a ridiculous amount. Like if you don't score 32 points, taking 32 shots, there's bigger issues here. But I mean, he still is able to put up points for this Mississippi State team that has kind of turned some heads here. I know Texas isn't really what we thought they might have been under Sean Miller to start his tenure here in Austin, but he was able to get a nice win over an Alabama team that seems to be slipping a little bit. And again, I think Mississippi State is in a prime position after the blowout loss to Kentucky. They got that out of their system. Like John Calipari said, you just got to flush the tape on it and move on to have an opportunity to get another signature win over a good Alabama team.
Yeah, so far there has been 3 scorers that have been the kind of the leading scorer so far, north of 30 points. And this goes back even to before this past year.
Yeah.
Josh Hubbard scored 38 against Alabama just last year.
Yeah.
38 points on Alabama.
No wonder why Nate Oates wants to prioritize defense.
Yes, exactly. This was January 29th. I know he had a big game, so I had to make sure I had found out the exact day. January 29th against Alabama, Josh Hubbard went for 38 points.
Wow.
That was only second to Jordan Pope for Texas, who we know is a scorer too. He could fill it up. He scored 42 against New Orleans, and then Trey Johnson scored 39 points in a Texas game over Arkansas. So I think that if you're Alabama, this is number one probably cause for concern for the defense because they have a lot of blow-bys go by them defensively, and that's exactly what Nate Oates has been talking about, their defensive effort going into this matchup. This is an interesting one. So if they can keep him in check, or maybe let him do one of the things where you let him score, and then you're like, okay, well, don't let anybody else beat us. Let Hubbard do his thing.
But I almost want to say he's kind of like Michaela Blake's on Vanderbilt.
Yeah.
He can beat you by himself.
Right.
He beat Texas by himself, basically.
That's right.
So I don't know if the answer is to take away all the other scores, because that's just going to make him shoot the ball 40 bajillion times, and he's going to end up putting up like 50 points.
Right.
Even though he's like, I don't know, probably 21 for 56 from the field. If it's just him, some LaMelo Ball, Chino Hills post Jello and Lonzo's stat line is just something like that. I mean, I don't know what you do if you're Alabama, because I almost feel like you just have to make the other guys beat you, because they haven't been able to beat other teams when Josh Hubbard isn't at his best.
Right, and Mississippi State lost to Kentucky. I thought that was more of a get-back game for Kentucky over the weekend. Lost to Missouri early on. They needed to get back and get right there at home when they were playing at Rupp Arena. Coach Chris Jans talked about his team and hot starts.
Yeah, we'd been playing better and had gotten off to some really good starts recently, and that carried over into tonight. I think every coach in America would tell you, internally one of the things they would wish for was to get off to a great start when you're on the road. Try to maybe take the crowd out of it, get them questioning what's going on, etc. And obviously that's kind of where it looked from my advantage point, but they rallied around each other and shored up the deficit pretty quickly. And at the end of the day, they just played better than us.
So you going with the hot hand, with the hot starts in Mississippi State, or does Alabama get that little bit of a bounce back?
Ooh, this one is tough. I want to say, as much as I like a pure scorer like Josh Hubbard, just a guy that can just go get you a bucket and just score at will, basically, I think Alabama, they right the ship. They stop the bleeding, so to speak. It seems like the ship, it's taking on water right now, and you want to be able to plug the hole, so to speak, before it basically capsizes your ship.
Right.
I think this is the chance for Nate Oates, for LeBaron Philon. I would expect LeBaron to come out guns blazing. Yeah. I would not expect him to hold back at all. I'm going to go a crazy number. I think LeBaron drops 30 tonight.
Woo! 30 would be huge. 30 would be huge. In the same vein, I do think that this is kind of gut check time.
Yep.
And I like teams that are having to do a gut check on the road. Yeah. That's exactly where this team is, going to Starkville. That place will be rocking. So I think it'll be a time where they have a chance to show the league, when the only a small handful of games, right, they have a chance to show the league, we're Bama, we'll still be here. Yep. Now, if they do lose this game, I think it could spell some
the alarm bells are ringing in Tuscaloosa.
No question.
There is no question about it, and they're already on to baseball.
Yeah, exactly. Which practice, a lot of teams have already opened their practices.
I believe they have their first open practice next week.
Yeah, I think it is.
Next week, yeah.
I think Auburn's is sometime soon. And I saw a list of teams in the SEC that have open baseball practice with a season less than a month away. Hard to believe, but no, a gut check time here for Alabama. I'm like you. I think they get it done coming up this week.
Just have to, right?
Oh, you would figure.
You would think.
Yeah, especially with their scoring that they have so far this year. Coming up next year on Southeast Sports Plus, we head back to the gridiron. We'll talk the NCAA football championship as Indiana will play against Miami. We'll break that down here and so much more in just a bit. Stay with us. The College Football National Championship game is now set. No team out of the SEC will be joining the mix. However, it should be a really entertaining game there in Miami Gardens as the Miami Hurricanes face off against Indiana in the championship game. Indiana once again looked dominant. And this is a team that has knocked off both Oregon and Alabama, and they've done it with relative ease. I mean, this is a absolute machine right now. There's a lot of people talking about where their place would be in amongst the all-time greatest college football teams if they were to win and cap this thing off against Miami. Of course, we'll talk a lot more about that after the game next Friday night or next Monday night there in Miami Gardens. But let's go back to how they got there, is docking off the Oregon Ducks. And this thing felt over almost from the jump. Pick six to start. And
I mean, it was over after the first play.
Yes.
I know Oregon drove down the field and tied it up, but how do you come back from throwing a pick six on the first play of the game?
Yeah.
Like you just don't.
Unless you get some kind of special teams play or a pick six yourself, a scoop and score, this is one of those teams you really can't make any mistakes against, because they will absolutely capitalize on all of them. And I'm not a tape head, I'm not a tape junkie, but there are people who broke down that very first play. And apparently, Dante Moore missed a couple of guys that were on the right-hand side, just like completely
I mean, he stared down the guy.
Wide open.
How do you just can't, and I don't mean to start, breaking down gameplay by any means, but how can you expect to have any success if you stare down your number one read? I mean, that was the biggest thing that Ohio State fans had with Kyle McCord. He only would stare down his first read, and some people might have attributed his success at Syracuse because the ACC just isn't a good defensive conference.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've seen in years past Clemson to have a good defense, but I mean this year they did not. This was probably the worst defense in the history of Clemson football under Dabo Swinney, and the record showed it. But I just don't think that we truly expected this.
Yeah.
And I will say, I'll say one thing. Now the Alabama blowout doesn't look as bad, in my opinion.
No,
because now Oregon looked worse than Alabama did, I would say. At least the Tide, they didn't keep it respectable by any means, but all of the Oregon points outside of the opening drive or the second drive touchdown were all in garbage time.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, and it was essentially 48, 49, or whatever it was, to the, I mean, I think it was 4. I'll give him 14, but no, you're right.
Give him 14.
It was garbage time, to say the least. And Indiana was already basically checked out of the game, already had a bunch of subs into the game. So, no, I mean, I don't take much credit. I mean, the score looked a little bit better than the game actually was. But this is an Indiana team led by Fernando Mendoza and the Heisman Trophy winner. There was, I think, some genuine concern coming from our program, at least, the fact that it had been so long between the Big Ten championship and then their first game because they had the first round bye. But it doesn't feel like it. I mean, it feels like they just marched right on in. He's looked Heisman form ever since. I think a lot of that has to do with his maturity. The fact that he's a Cal guy, ended up coming from Cal to Indiana, but he's just a mature guy, and I think that he understands exactly the levers that he needs to pull in order to be the best leader for this squad that he can be.
Well, at the time of kickoff in the Rose Bowl, teams that had a first-round bye in the 12-team playoff were 0-6.
Yeah, exactly.
Up until this Indiana team that, I mean, they just said, you know what, who cares if we had 25 days off? Why don't we say, you're just preparing the wrong way, because they looked like they didn't skip a beat at all since the Big Ten championship, and they just, like they ran Oregon out of Atlanta, they ran Alabama all the way back to the state of Alabama. So it's just it was shocking to me before the game that some people had Dante Moore above Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah.
And I think this definitely puts that to rest. But with the SEC now, and I know the SEC is going to have some ties in with the national championship. Obviously, a Saban disciple will win the national championship. But there's going to be some interesting conversations and some uncomfortable conversations for some LSU fans, because I don't think we've seen dominance like this since 2019.
No, we haven't. I mean, 2019 and 2020, 2019 at LSU, 2020 Alabama, which that 2020 Alabama, you have to truncate that a little bit because of, the COVID schedule and everything else.
I still think the LSU team is better than the Alabama team.
Yeah, and so people will start to make the comparisons about if this team eclipses that LSU team as the best of all time. Now, I've seen some numbers that could make that argument, to help make that argument. I think the one thing about this Indiana team will be, and do this fairly or unfairly with college football teams, a lot of times what we'll do is we will take the college team, but then we'll extrapolate it to what they do in the NFL while judging the college team. I think it needs to be two separate arguments. You can have a great college team with amazing college players that turn into be amazing NFL players, or you can have a great college team that doesn't necessarily have as many great NFL players, but that doesn't diminish what they were in college. I think that's where we're going to run. The rubber is going to meet the road when it comes to this team overall with Indiana. It's going to be if people can separate what they do at IU as compared to what they do in the NFL, because I think it's so easy to make that leap that, oh, no, the NFL team is better because you just have these household names that you know in the NFL.
I mean, here's what I'll say. LSU, when you compare teams defensively and offensively, LSU had the better offense.
Sure.
I think LSU's offense would be better than Indiana's offense right now.
Right.
The thing is, Indiana's defense is light years better than what LSU's defense was that year. And I don't want to say like the defense almost lost them a chance at the national championship, but it just wasn't as strong as the offense, which, I mean, I believe Joe Burrow, what did he throw, 60 touchdown passes that year?
Yeah. That sounds
when
right.
you have, let's just compare it in college at the time. Joe Burrow is a better quarterback in college than Fernando Mendoza.
Yeah.
And then you look at the receiver position, or
Cooper.
Surratt and Cooper.
Yeah,
they don't stack up to Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson.
Justin Jefferson, no.
I mean, Terrace Marshall also was pretty good in college, and then you look at the running back position. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is better. And like I just don't know from an offensive standpoint. No one is going to beat that, especially now with NIL. But it's still impressive what Indiana is doing under Curt Cignetti with 0 5-stars, might I add. 0 5 stars.
And I looked at some stats about the when you mix the 4 and 5 stars. I think every team outside of Indiana had at least 35.
Yeah.
And Indiana had 8. And they were all 8 4-stars because they had, like you said, they had no 5-stars. So I
mean, they got some 5-stars coming in now, but this is before,
right?
And they're not going to go anywhere,
right?
A lot of people thought there was going to be, some drawback here this year because the last year they had the good portal class. They had Curtis Rourke in. Curtis Rourke ended up leaving. The wide receiver core stayed the same, but they couldn't win the big game. And then they won that game against Oregon, and then ended up winning a game that they shouldn't have against Penn State.
Right.
That kind of springboarded them to the rest of the season. So it's just people think they're going away. I just don't think they will.
I don't think they will either, especially with Curt Cignetti. We got a chance to hear from Coach Cignetti about his defensive coordinator and Brian Haynes.
No, I think it's a huge part. I mean, it's hard to put a percentage on because the players make the plays. But they're well coached and they've got a lot of repetition stemming from spring ball, fall camp. But our philosophy is to attack, and we are moving a lot of pieces in the front 7. And we've always been top 5 in the country against the run, TFLs and sacks, and that's just our philosophy on how to play defense.
So Indiana's moving on to play in the national championship game, and Oregon's going home. And one of the things I wanted to touch on with Oregon is the fact that twice now, this is a team that has been, I don't even know what to call it. Like, it's been interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Especially in these bigger games because they do really, really well
in the regular season.
And then they just get their doors blown off in these playoff games. How much do you think this affects Dan Lanning, his reputation, and everything else that comes with, being able to play in these marquee games?
I almost want to say, and this is no diss to him by any means, but I feel like he's just another James Franklin. He can recruit well.
Ooh, yeah.
But when you put him in these big game situations, I mean, you look at the game last year against Ohio State, didn't really do anything.
No.
And then you want to talk about his record in Mercedes-Benz Stadium? I mean, that's embarrassing.
Wow.
That's over. Yeah, that's over 100 points allowed, and you've scored 25 points.
And right, and as you mentioned, that part of that 22 was kind of garbage time.
Yeah, and then the loss to Georgia was his former team, and it was his first game as the Oregon head coach. So it's just like, where do you go from here? I know you've got all these guys coming in next year, but can he win the big game moving forward? And I don't. It's no disrespect to him, because I do think he is a good coach, and I do think that he's made Oregon into a powerhouse. A lot of people want to talk about Phil Knight and the jerseys and everything, and all that. And we talked about how Mark Cuban has now stepped up for Indiana. We're starting to see some of these donors.
That could be scary.
Yeah, that could be scary. I'm telling you, they're not going anywhere. They're here to stay. It's ironic that they're also red.
Right.
You know? Like it's just so ironic. But it's just, I don't know where you go from here, because now you've got Raiola, who could be your quarterback. We still don't know about Dante Moore, which, I mean, we could talk about that. That was one to forget.
Woo. That was, excuse me.
I mean, some people had him as the #1 quarterback in the draft next year. I think this puts that to rest.
Yes,
easily,
no question about it. And you see those 2 lost fumbles, started the game there with the pick 6. Dante Moore, he's got a lot of the attributes that the pro guys like, but did not step up in the biggest moments for his squad. We heard from him after the game. Here is Dante Moore as he now hinges on a big decision to go pro or come back.
You know, you can't win football games if you're causing turnovers. So just something, of course, I need to work at. You know, that comes just with reps. But overall, I mean, there was a great Indiana defense, great defensive coordinator. But at the end of the day, we beat ourselves.
He said it. At the end of the day, they just beat themselves. And that's how you have to take it as a quarterback. You just take it on the chin. We beat ourselves, and that's what they did. And they'll be thinking about this one for the entire offseason, especially next Monday night when they go watch Indiana go play Miami for the national championship.
I mean, he said that they beat themselves, and they really beat themselves with the turnover. Now, what has been the one thing about Carson Beck that you're holding your breath about? It's those turnovers. Yeah, he threw an interception against Ole Miss. Now, people will say it was batted up, and they dominated the game, 41 minutes time of possession. Outside of that, but I don't know, because obviously we'll talk more about this game as it gets closer and as the week goes on, and especially next week.
Yeah.
But I don't know how, if you're Miami, you can stop this team that just seems like it's a team of destiny.
Yes, I know, and it does feel like that, and I think that almost Miami will have to play a perfect game in order to do so, and we haven't seen that yet. But if they play like the same way they did against Ole Miss, this is over.
It's over.
It's over.
And especially how they played in that second half.
Yeah.
I mean, they were this close. This close. One close, controversial pass interference penalty away from having the ball on the 2-yard line, one play to go to the national championship.
Exactly. But it's all from naught, and Miami will play Indiana for the national championship coming up next year on Southeast Sports Plus. We head over to Waco, catch up with Parker Ream, talk some Texas A&M hoops, buckyball on a nice little roll to start the SEC. We have that and more next. Back here on Southeast Sports Plus, we've been diagnosing the first few games in the SEC slate for a lot of teams. What we knew coming into the season were some teams were reloading. We knew some teams were also coming in with different coaches. One of those teams is Texas A&M, and we're happy to be joined by our good friend Parker Ream. Parker, we talked a little bit last week, kind of jokingly so, that we did not know what to make of buckyball going into the season, and then into the non-conference. Played some teams, obviously went north of 110 on some of those teams, but now starting SEC play, there's still a goose egg by the loss column there with this team. What do you make of this hot start here by the Aggies?
One of a few teams in the SEC with a goose egg in that loss column. I think they've proved that they can be one of those better teams. And I think they're ranked fifth right now in total points per game in the entire country. So that's just something to tip your cap to Bucky McMillan and say, maybe buckyball can work in the modern day of the SEC. And this is still one of the best conferences in the nation. To be able to do that and start off 3-0 in conference play, I don't even know that Bucky McMillan thought he would start that well in conference play. So to be able to do that has been a major. Sorry, my cat right now is trying to.
Oh no, we need to see the cat.
Hop over the.
We gotta see the cat.
Yeah, nice.
Hey, look at that.
Nice.
Trying to hop over the fence right here.
Yeah, we don't need a stray cat.
Yeah. But to start 3-0 has been a great challenge for Bucky and a great success in Texas A&M for sure.
You don't only cover Texas A&M, you also cover Baylor, who are in the Big 12, and one of the guys that you probably have experience with in Pop Isaacs, who played in the Big 12, has made a name for himself coming off the bench, not only at Texas A&M, but in years past. I mean, what insight can you give on his ability to be that spark coming off the bench for Bucky McMillan?
Well, I think it's honestly a different role than Pop Isaacs has been playing the past few years. When he was at Texas Tech in the Big 12, he was one of the go-to guys for the Red Raiders. And then when he goes to Creighton, he was one of those go-to guys before he got injured. So now it's kind of a different role for him, but he's really excelled in that bench role, I think. And that's just a product of maybe the caliber of player he is coming off the bench, being able to go against maybe the twos of other teams and just kind of provide that spark when the starters aren't on the floor. And I think that's something he's done. He did it against Auburn. He did it against Oklahoma. So now you're just kind of seeing the depth of this buckyball team really show out in these past couple weeks.
Absolutely. Coach Bucky talked after the game a little bit about their defense, and we'll get to something specific here in a moment, but listen to Coach Bucky talking about the defense for the Aggies after their latest win.
Well, we felt that we kind of we're doing a better job guarding the half court. We weren't very good in the half court the first half. We were good in the full court. The second half, the other team was playing better in the full court than the half court. Thought our guys were pretty fresh in the game late, which was good, and we tried to get the matchups more instead of switching as much. And so Marcus wanted to guard 9, and we kind of got with the right matchups there instead of switching as much. And our players kind of took it personal to stop their guy. Key stat in the game, they had 17 turnovers. We only had 8. So 9 more shots at the rim with the turnovers, and we obviously shot more free throws.
I think when people just watch buckyball, just casually as a sports fan, you think, well, high-powered offense, it looks like, just up and down the court. They take a lot of pride in their defense. You saw it in a few games so far this season. How strong has that defense been, and how much will that be able to help them as they can continue to make a push towards March?
Well, really, the defense only has to be as good as the offense. I think that when the offense is firing on all cylinders like that, you really just have to limit opposing offenses as much as possible. I don't think this is a defense that's going to hold them below 60 points a game. This isn't a Houston or an Arizona, something like that, where defense is the name of the game, and then hopefully the offense comes. I think it's offense first and then defense, and this team has been really good. I think the length is what's really causing a lot of teams some issues, and whether it's the starters or the bench, both have kind of played hand in hand with each other and delivered the product we've seen.
for this team now. They go back on the road. It was an interesting game at Auburn, to say the least, when they got their first SEC road win. Now headed back to the road, this time once again in a game tonight against Tennessee. There you see the upcoming games for this squad. What are some of the things you want to see from this team as they close out the month of January and enter a very important February?
Yeah, that game coming up at 6 tonight. Really, I think that's the biggest first test for this team of, can you prove, like we talked about last week, can you prove that you guys can hang with the best of the best in the SEC? Mm-hmm. And I think that's going to start, matriculating a little bit throughout February and early March, is those big time tests. But then you look at that at Texas. I think that's another crucial road game. And yeah, the Longhorns are struggling, but last year, Texas A&M dropped that one down in Austin to a team that honestly wasn't better than the Aggies at that point in time. So I think to kind of show maybe that this isn't a team like maybe Buzz Williams in the past that would drop a few games that they shouldn't. Mm-hmm. And I think that's they might beat teams that they shouldn't, but I think this is a buckyball team that's looking to be as consistent as possible through SEC conference play, and I think that's just something that you want to see over these next couple of weeks, is consistency both on the offensive side and the defensive side.
For sure. The women have gone through a gauntlet so far this year, coming off of a really rough game against Vanderbilt, to say the least. Lost that game by 40 points to a Vanderbilt team who, by the way, is still undefeated so far on the season. Coming up next is a really good game against a rival in Texas. What does this team need to show? Asking to get a win against Texas, I think, would be a tall task. But what does this team need to show as they move forward and try to get their footing about them, so to speak?
Yeah, so after that 40-point loss, I asked Joni Taylor, how do you even go through this gauntlet of a schedule? Maybe kind of put that in the rear view and look towards the future. And she said this week is not about Texas. It's not about facing one of the top teams in the country. It's about them getting right, and them. It's all about Texas A&M. And I think honestly that it speaks volumes, because I think this team needs to find their own identity. It hasn't been a bad season by any stretch for Joni Taylor's squad, but certainly not something that inspires a lot of hope, like a 40-point loss to Vanderbilt when after the first quarter it was only a 4-point deficit, and then they really let things just spiral. So I think this is a team that really needs to think about where they want to go from here. And they have the pieces to be one of those middle-of-the-pack SEC teams. But if you look at that upcoming schedule for them, they got Oklahoma, LSU is coming up, and Texas. So Texas right after is LSU at Reed Arena. I just can't imagine a worse schedule. And then they got the Missouri Tigers.
Oh yeah, you're repping it. We're
gonna. But that realistically, that should be a win for them. But you look at those. I mean, that's as tough of a 3-game stretch as I can think of.
Absolutely.
So Joni Taylor and company definitely have their work cut out for them.
Yep, and with those good teams, you have to protect the basketball. Coach Taylor talked about those turnovers.
Yeah, I thought when they continued to turn their pressure up, we just got soft. I thought we killed our dribble. We thinking okay, here comes the person who's supposed to come here for me to pass it to. So I pick my dribble up thinking she's going to be open, and then I get to her and she's not open anymore. And so now the ball is dead, and now I'm throwing something up, or I'm not aggressive in what I'm doing. I thought they sped us up a little bit offensively as well. We got in the air and made some plays that weren't like us in terms of just the decisions we made once we got in the paint.
Final topic, let's talk a little football here. The transfer portal has been really hot. I know Cam Coleman paid a visit over there, the top wide receiver. He ends up signing at Texas. However, they get a receiver from Alabama, another receiver from Alabama, and Isaiah Horton, who had a really strong close to the season in the regular season in that game against Auburn in the Iron Bowl, scoring 3 touchdowns. What does Aggie Nation feel about being able to get that receiver out of Alabama, and what they need to do maybe over the next couple of days to secure a strong portal class?
Yeah, I think the transfer portal taketh and the transfer portal also giveth. I think a lot of Aggie fans maybe were feeling a little disheartened after not getting Cam Coleman. This is the second time. I mean, they recruited him out of high school also and did not get Cam Coleman. So I think not getting him and then losing him to your biggest rival certainly had put a sour taste in a lot of Aggie fans' mouths. But then you pick Isaiah Horton out of Alabama, who is that big wide receiver with that frame that can go up and get those contested one-on-one balls on the outside. And that's something that they didn't have last year, even with Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver. They had the guys to generate space on the outside, but maybe not the height or the physicality to go up and get those balls. And that's something that you saw in the Miami game, not being able to separate. Something you saw in the Texas game, not being able to separate from those wide receivers and the cornerbacks that were playing down and kind of giving Marcel Reed the space to see if he'll make those deep contested throws. And honestly, I think that this really provides them a great weapon, but they need to add more. They don't have, Concepcion right now unless Mario Craver's going to go and step into that role. Right. So a lot of different skill position players. They've done well adding offensive line talent. A lot of SEC starters have transferred into the program. I think they really have to bolster the defensive side of the ball, which is something that I'm sure we'll see from Mike Elko in the coming days.
Well, we'll hit on the other school that's actually in Waco, and I don't remember seeing a situation unfold quite like this where DJ Lagway, it's like the whole thing with DJ Lagway, and I said this, it's like you're dating someone and you want to be committed, but he's like, you know what, actually let me go test the waters a little bit more. I'm committed to you, but I also want to value my options a little bit in other areas. I never understood it. But as far as I know, he's officially committed to Baylor, so there's no more visits going on. Or can you provide some clarity on that?
Yeah, that's where we're at right now. Okay. I guess we're at where the options of the other girls on the side are off the table. But Ole Miss is already taken. They're in a committed relationship. So I think it was a really weird scenario though, and I think that's not just for people. I'm glad to hear that from somebody not in the Waco area say that. It's because weird. From the outside looking in, this is a guy that his dad went to Baylor, played at Baylor, went on his official visit to the Baylor men's basketball game, which they ended up losing to Iowa State, but apparently liked his visit enough.
What's up with quarterbacks? Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but what's up with quarterbacks going to basketball games and then just ended up losing? Like, what is going on?
Is that a new thing?
I think it might be. Like, what are we doing?
And that you see it right here. He looked like he was having a great time, and I think it was a big get for Baylor, for a Baylor transfer portal class that really hasn't been performing as well as many thought. Right. Especially after losing a lot in the transfer portal, they really hadn't been gaining a lot. So when they get DJ Lagway, that transfer class jumped all the way to 24th in the country overall. And then there's some hesitancy whether he's going to stick with Baylor. I think that was just Baylor fans saying, "Oh, here we go again." But now he's committed, he's locked in, and I guess once pen gets put to paper, then it's officially official.
He put the lock emoji in his bio. That's how you know right there.
He's locked in.
That's all, and he's been recruiting other players to come to Waco too.
Okay,
so if I were a Baylor fan, I would think that and they just got Draylon Miller from Colorado, a star wide receiver from them. So I think the future's looking a little bit bright in Waco after it's been gloomy for the past couple of weeks.
They'll only lose to the Mountaineers by 40 now.
The defense might not look great, but the offense might look pretty good.
Parker, thank you so much for joining us there on your off day, man. We'll let you get back to your cat and make sure it's not roaming around the neighborhood.
Yeah, sorry Scout made an appearance on there, but I'm
glad
we
love
Scout. Her podcast debut today.
No, we love Scout here on Southeast Sports Plus, man. Thank you again, brother.
Thanks, guys.
Absolutely. Parker Ream joining us from Waco, Texas. And I'll tell you what, I love all of our guests here, and especially the ones that
I think that was our second pet appearance, because I think Casey K's dog.
That's right.
Yeah. That's number 2. So if any of our guests are listening right now, please feel free to get your pet an appearance on here. We'll make a little collage at the end of the year.
It's a pet-friendly environment over here.
Environment.
Scouting everybody else, all aboard. Coming up next year on Southeast Sports Plus, the college baseball season opens in less than a month, if you can believe it. The preseason rankings are out. Lots of SEC teams in the mix. We'll break it down next. Believe it or not, the college baseball season will be here in less than a month. Teams are having opening practice where fans can come out and see, and then the season officially opens in early February. We have our first look at the D1 baseball preseason poll. Lots of SEC teams there in the mix. This is 25 through 21 as we go up in the polls. Texas A&M at the SEC, followed by Vanderbilt also in there as well, and some teams that we see making deep runs a lot. That includes a team like Miami. Really interesting start here, especially with teams like Texas A&M and Vanderbilt. You don't expect to see Vanderbilt that low.
No, and I mean, Vanderbilt was the #1 seed last year, so you would expect them to eventually build up as the season goes on.
Yeah.
Texas A&M, I would expect to see them in the mix as well. But Miami's a team that finally got over the hump last year and was able to make a nice run. Wake Forest, not too long ago, was the #1 ranked team in the country, I believe, a couple of years ago when they had Rhett Lauder and Chase Burns. Chase Burns, the former Tennessee pitcher as well,
right,
before he transferred over there. And then Arizona was the last standing Big 12 team, and I think last year they came into the season with a bit of a chip on their shoulder. They hosted a regional and ended up, I believe, going 0-2 in the regional.
Mm-hmm.
So they were out after 2 games. They fought back, and they made a nice run to Omaha last year.
Yeah, absolutely. Inside the top 20 we go now. Southern Miss has had a great baseball program for a very long time out of the Sun Belt. They are, I won't be a bit surprised to see them once again back in the regional or maybe even super regional coming up next year. Clemson, Kentucky, who's had a strong baseball program over the last few years. Florida State has national championship pedigree in their past, obviously. NC State they're in as well. But Kentucky, the SEC team here in the mix, is yet another one.
Yeah, and Kentucky was in the national news, I believe, a few years ago with the whole debacle around the hosting a regional the same weekend as a concert. And
That's
so
right.
some of the
No
players
hotel
had to stay in the dorm. So that whole thing, that whole debacle, Southern Miss hosted a regional last year. I believe they were the 16th seed.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, so they did host a regional, so I would expect them to be back pretty soon. Clemson also hosted a regional, lost to my Mountaineers in the regional championship.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
That's a little bit unfortunate for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Southern Miss also lost their regional to Miami, if you remember back from last spring. Inside the top 15, we head now. The Georgia Bulldogs, Tennessee Volunteers. Of course, Tennessee, there was some noise in the offseason with their coach, Tony Vitello, going out to the Bay Area. Will now be the head coach over with the San Francisco Giants. Florida, right there. They've had championships in their recent past. Oregon State, who, of course, I think they hosted a Super Regional last year over there in Corvallis, played Florida State, if I remember right. And then and North Carolina there at number 11.
Yeah, a couple of interesting storylines to watch out for here. Josh Elander's heading into his first year there in Knoxville, taking over, which, I mean, we talked about it when the news broke that Tony Vitello accepted the manager position over in San Francisco, about how he elevated this program to the heights that we see it as now. But before he was there, I mean, Tennessee was basically the doormat of the SEC.
Right.
When I think I said when your best player is Todd Helton before he gets there, that you know that just says what it needs to say. But another big storyline, Kevin O'Sullivan.
Mm-hmm.
He took that leave of absence, didn't know what his status was going to be for the 2026 season.
Right.
He has now returned to be the head coach there at Florida for this year.
A longtime coach there, Coach Sullivan, leading the Gators once again. Expect to have a really strong season. Now inside the top 10, TCU's had some recent success here. Auburn was one of the top 4 seeds last year. They were the number 4 seed last year, made it to the Super Regional before losing to the hottest team in baseball at the time, was Coastal Carolina. I think they had won like 50 straight or 45 straight games
like that
in there as well. But you see both those teams on this graphic as both Auburn and Coastal Carolina, and they're smashed in between Louisville and Arkansas. And I believe Arkansas last year had a really good run all the way to, they had a good run all the way to Omaha a season ago.
Yeah, and there's another couple teams here that kind of stick out to me. Auburn made that nice step up last year. Louisville, who's been a pretty dominant baseball program there in recent memory, and then Vahiva Alloy over there at Arkansas had a really nice year before getting drafted. I don't remember where he went to. Yeah, that's slipping my mind right now. But you brought up Coastal Carolina, had that insane run all the way to the national championship, but they fell short to the preseason number 2 team, which a lot of people are surprised that they aren't number 1.
Yeah, a lot of people are surprised that the LSU Tigers are not number 1. I looked up UCLA, though. I know they had a strong season last year, but they returned 8 regular everyday starters and 10 of their 12 pitchers, and they added 2 pitchers there as well. So probably the reason why, just based on a lot of hype from last year. But Texas, keep in mind, was a team that was a number 2 overall seed, and they did not even get out of their own regional. So lots of compelling storylines, Mississippi State and Georgia Tech in there as well. So it should be a really fun baseball season.
Watch out for Drew Burris again over there at Georgia Tech.
Hey, exactly. Exactly right.
Home runs.
That's our show today here on Southeast Sports Plus. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you back here tomorrow.